Today, I'm talking to relationship expert and sex therapist, Dr. Viviana Coles. Many of you will recognize her from the hit reality TV show, Married at First Sight. Dr. Viviana works with couples and individuals who are experiencing emotional and physical intimacy issues. I was excited to dive into her book, The 4 Intimacy Styles, which teaches the key to lasting physical intimacy. We talk about how important it is to sustain sexual and emotional intimacy in long-term partnerships, how to overcome all too common intimacy ruts and challenges, and how by learning yours and your partner's intimacy style can transform your sex life. I loved our conversation, and I hope you do too. And welcome to this episode of Let's Talk Love. I'm so happy to be joined by Dr. Viviana Coles. Hello, Dr. Viviana.
Hello, Robin. I am ready for this.
And you know what I love? I love the fact that your outfit today is matching your book.
Oh, yes. Yes.
I don't think you did it on purpose, but you totally did. It looks, you always look so beautiful.
I have always been drawn towards red and black. And so when my marketing person ages ago, over like nearly 2 decades ago, was like, hey, let's do your logo. And I was like, absolutely. And then, of course, it's a lot about it's systems, right? You just want to be able to see something, buy it, and then know you're going to use it. So yeah, definitely intentional. So I'm very intentional with my outfits.
Oh, it's interesting is that I think today I'm wearing Real Love Ready colors. I never really thought about that, but I am. We've got coral and cream and blue. It's like, and I did not do that on purpose, but I see it now.
It's all in here. You're just brilliant.
Well, I'm just so happy to have you. And today we're going to talk about, it's definitely one of my favorite topics. And I know our community, I'm excited for the IG too, for just talk about sex and intimacy, because it's really important stuff.
It is. It's really important. And still so many people have trouble just kind of entering that conversation and initiating the conversation surrounding sex. And I think that communities like yours, communities like mine, we know how to do it in a way where everybody's welcome.
Yes. Oh, that's for sure. So this week, I have been reading your book, The 4 Intimacy Styles, The Key to Lasting Physical Intimacy. And Dr. Viviana, I want to say that this is a fantastic book. I loved it.
Thank you.
When I wanted to, I learned so much, and I was just like nodding my head and highlighting so many pages and so many things you were saying, going, this is information that we all need. So one thing I wanted to start off with is just a quote that you wrote. Relationships are some of the most valuable and precious investments. And learning healthy sexual intimacy is one of the greatest ways we can protect that investment. And I really appreciated this analogy of talking about our relationships as an investment, because of course they are. And but really what we're talking about is the sexual intimacy and protecting that investment in your relation, in your partnership, your committed partnership.
I think, for so long, I was trying to find a way to help people understand that, just like insurance is important to have, medical, dental, if you can, your home insurance, auto insurance, while there isn't really a way to buy marital insurance or relationship insurance, I try to make this as close of an analogy as possible, because for so many people, they would buy it. If there was such a thing as relationship insurance, they would buy it. Well, I'm not going to be so bold as to say like, this is it, but this is one way for you to start really understanding that the more you invest into your relationship, the more your entire life is going to go the way that you hope it does. And all of that, it just permeates into every piece of our lives.
It so does. So something you talk about, and you've got 20 years plus experience in sex and relationship therapy and coaching and counseling. You talk about the uncertainty of relationships and how fragile they are.
They
Right.
really are.
And this is why you're talking about like the insurance. We need insurance for, we all sign up. Hopefully if you're married, you're signing up for, a very long, lifelong partnership. Doesn't always end that way. And you say this may seem obvious, but we don't act like our relationships are fragile.
It's like I think we're all guilty of taking it for granted. We think once we have both created this verbal agreement that everything else will, of course, be in line and in keeping with that agreement. Well, if life were only so simple, right? If we could only say, this is what we want. Oh, you want that too? You're saying you want the same things. I wonder if that means, sarcastically, that we're going to get them. But that's where the work comes in. That's where the constant communication, both verbal, nonverbal, both emotional and physical, comes into play, is to continue to have that agreement be something that you're checking in on. And one of the ways that I think you can do that is through physical intimacy.
Yes. So you talk about NRE, a new relationship energy.
Yeah.
Which is, I really love this. I started laughing and I was talking to my girlfriend, Kirsten, who works with me as well, about this, because it's like, this is really, you talk about how when we first meet somebody, it's like you're auditioning in a way for this part, this role that you want to play in that person's life, and vice versa, right? You're doing your very best. You're dressing up. You are acting, you're on your very best behavior, obviously. Sometimes, most of the time.
Sometimes, for a lot of us, we are.
You're spending so much of your focus, time, and energy and thoughts it's like you're like all centered around this person, right? And unfortunately, once we have secured that attachment, that committed relationship that we are looking for with that person, we stop trying to be worthy of it, you say.
We do. And I think it's because we almost feel like I've got it. And now the keeping it kind of falls to the wayside. Again, it goes back to this unspoken agreement. And sometimes it is a spoken agreement that we both decided and shared that we want to have what our end goal is. And then we completely rely on each other to make sure that that happens. But it isn't often something that people check in on. Often people are talking about vow renewals as like a celebration. And then you get people who say, I wonder if we should get to a place where we have to renew our marriage licenses. And if not, that's kind of been something that goes around the internet every once in a while, is this idea of renewing your marriage license or deciding, no, we're not going to. But I think that we choose to renew our vows or choose to renew our agreement in a relationship, in a marriage, in a commitment every single day. And one of the ways that you can do that, of course, is through connecting emotionally, but the connecting physically, we kind of take for granted. We kind of assume like, oh, there's always tomorrow. And look, I'm guilty of it. We have 2 kids. Absolutely. This is not about perfection. This is about humanity.
No.
And so it kind of ebbs and flows, and it's a roller coaster at times. And we're all guilty of it at some point. But if you're conscious of it, if your partner's conscious of it, if you're talking about it, communicating, all of that good stuff, then at least it's not falling aside and going away, which is then started the demise of any relationship that's romantic.
Yeah. And I really, the whole beginning of your book and a lot of the book, before we get into the styles, is about the importance of sex in your relationship. And I've got so many great quotes from yours. It was just so full of them. But you say you've heard about the top 3 marriage killers: money, sex, and kids. It might surprise you to learn that in my experience, so in your experience working with couples, there's only one true assassin: sex. And this is what you're seeing couples for in your practice, right, Viviana?
All the time. Yes. And fortunately, I've been able to continue to have a thriving practice based out of Houston, but I see couples from all over the world, thankfully, for coaching. I'm licensed in New York State, Texas, and California, so I see clients there as well. But, through my work with them, what I find is people expect there to be money problems, and those are oftentimes, more often than not, outside of your control. They're external forces. The kids, also external beings that and we always can see it as like, well, this is a tough time. This is a stage in their development. This is a stage in the growth of our family. And there's light at the end of the tunnel. But when it comes to sex, what I'm noticing and what I've seen in my clients is that you may have a period of disconnect, but it's not like, well, once the kids are older, your relationship won't be able to survive that. You can't wait. You can't wait 2 months, 2 years. It is actively eroding at the fabric of your relationship if you are allowing this to be time periods. Oh, well, now we're going into the period of having, toddlers. Your relationship cannot withstand it.
Right. It's so simple. That doesn't mean it's easy. However, it's mind blowing. That's how it's just like, the fact that this is so common, that people are just not having sex, right? They're thinking, oh, when this happens, then it's almost like this idea that when this happens to me, I'll be happy. It's like, no, we're learning in our culture, and that you have to actually be in yourself and be happy and content. In order to create more in your life. It's not like when this happens, right? So you ask a lot of your clients this question around why sex is so important.
And that's
and
really
what is your answer? Because
So why it's so important, it's something that comes up often in my practice, and what I would hope most certified sex therapists practice, because the why will help you get to your how. Just like with any sort of business practice, any sort of entrepreneurial endeavor, your why, you having this podcast and your community that means so much to you, you probably often think about why this is so important, even because it is difficult. It's a lot of work to do what you're doing. And I think for a lot of us, the getting past the, oh my gosh, why am I doing this? The why has to be so important. For me, I think a lot of the why comes from a place of, I tell people, you cannot do this. You cannot create intimacy, both emotional and physical intimacy. They're one and the same with just anyone. When you've chosen a primary partner, they are the only outlet. If you're in a monogamous relationship, they're the only outlet for this. You are their only outlet. You are their partner in this. No one else can satisfy this in that same way. And so if you're not doing it, then literally it's absent.
Yes.
It's not like they can get it anywhere else. We can change in front of, our doctors will see us naked. Our kids will get kisses and snuggles. We will kiss our dogs. We will say, I love you. To friends and family.
And you can share like intimate details about things, your thoughts, your feelings, like with your best friends or your therapist.
Exactly. But this is the only thing that within the construct of monogamy, which is still what we're all typically working under, and the majority of people are still working under this construct of monogamy forever. So if you're not addressing it, it is literally absent, and it is a gaping hole, and things will fill that hole. That sounds bad, but you know what I mean.
Yes. And I think this goes back to like the word that I read and resonated with me is like the sacredness of your intimate partnership. And that's what you have. And if you are monogamous, like you said, this is the one. And like, so it comes down to your fantasies that you share with only this one person in your life. And of course, the physical act of physical intimacy and the emotional part of yourself that only you give that to that one person. So there's there's that beautiful sacredness.
There's the sacredness
you want to nurture.
But there is also a feeling of pressure and obligation and responsibility that comes from that. And depending on how much of each of those you're experiencing, it can either become something that is very positive in your life, or it can be something that is very draining and negative in your life.
We at Real Love Ready are so excited to be hosting In Bloom, a love and relationship summit, April 14th and 15th, 2023 in Vancouver, BC. Join us for an insider pass to the most trusted relationship expertise, an intimate weekend of in-person or virtual learning, growth, and community. We're bringing you the insights and tools you need to learn and bloom in your relationships. Head over to realloveready.com to learn more and get your tickets. We truly hope to see you there. So, you say without healthy physical intimacy, relationship satisfaction simply cannot be maintained. And I was like, oh, that's a big one, right? To say like, if a partner, please expand on that.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think the reason that it's important for people to read that and then reread it is because we don't want to believe that that's the case. We don't ever want to dilute our relationships down to we have a sexual connection or we don't. And if we don't, then we're not together. But that's not practical. Having seen clients for nearly 20 years now, I'm noticing that if your sexual connection is out of whack, you cannot paint over it. You cannot cover it with a piece of furniture. It is a foundational crack that will ultimately start to really impact the other parts of your life. So a lot of people don't like to think about that. Well, I am more than my sex drive, and I am more than my, I feel so objectified when people talk about, or when my partner talks about how, sex is so important to them, and that if we don't figure this out, they're going to leave me. That sounds like if we don't have sex, you'd mean nothing to me. But what was really happening, and if you really get into it like we do in my office and in my sessions, what they're saying is, if we don't have that connection, what does it say about us? And who else is going to fill this need for both of us? We are humans. We have bodies, we have brains, we have spirits that need sexuality in order to experience pleasure as adults and pleasure as beings. And if we can't do that together, and if I can't be a part of that, then I'm missing out on true intimate connection.
Yes. Beautiful.
But that doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that there's one way for that to look. So that's the other thing.
We're going to get into that. We'll
sex,
yes.
It's not just intercourse. It's not just penis entering something or, some sort of penetrative act. There are so many different ways. And for so many differently abled people to be able to experience sexual pleasure, even if it's just through sensuality. But a lot of people don't do that. And they don't dive into that. Once they have intercourse of some sort or penetrative act of some sort, they tend to think, well, everything else is just foreplay.
Yes. So I know there's so many people that are listening that can relate when they're parents, right? And parenting it can be the sex killer for sure. And so you say our parenting culture demands that even the intimacy we have with our partners be diverted to our children. Also true. Our partners deserve some of this romantic and intimate energy. Instead, they often get the leftovers. Oh my gosh. I thought about this because I've definitely experienced that. I've got 3 kids. I've gone through it. Like, of course. But what I really liked your example in the book, Viviana, about James and Nikisha. Mm-hmm. And this is because this one is just like, we can all relate to this, right? It's almost like there's social norms at play as well. So James is working. He's the breadwinner for the home. Nikisha's home and she is taking care of the kids. She's taking care of the house. She's the manager of their lives pretty much.
Yes, she's
right?
taking care of everything.
Yep. And he wants to have sex. And at the end of the day, she's like, I'm not into it. No, I'm exhausted. I'm tired. Like, the dishes are piling up. I'm making all the meals. Like, what do you expect? And this is such a common story that so many of us have lived through.
This is the every couple.
Yes,
absolutely.
So, but I really like this. I like the strategies involved, right? So James is like, okay, well, I can help you. Like, what do you need, honey? Like, if you're saying no, you're really tired at the end of the day. How can I pick up some slack? So he's doing the dishes. He's helping with the laundry. He's doing everything he can to help unburden his wife. And it's still not working.
So
please, Dr. Coles, tell us, how do you get around this?
So first of all, for all of you who have either just entered parenthood or are planning on entering parenthood, or who have been parents forever, you're going to experience some degree of what James and Nikisha, this case study in my book, go through. And so knowing that prioritizing sexuality at any phase of your commitment to each other needs to be somewhere in the top 5, but for sure in the top 10 of things that you're working on every single day. Even if it's just to say, gosh, I really wish that I had the desire to have sex right now, but I am so exhausted. Or I can't get my head off of the fact that we have a huge party coming up this weekend and my head is consumed by it. I wish that we could just take a respite and that I could actually enjoy it. Talking about wanting it, I tell people, I want you to want to have sex. Well, guess what?
Yes.
So does your partner. Even if y'all aren't having it, being able to tell them,
you're talking about it.
I would if I could right now, but I feel like I could fall asleep right now on the couch. I'm falling asleep. Or, the kids just took it out of me today, but my plan is, and then fill in your plan with, tomorrow, let's get the kids into bed, 20 minutes earlier. Let's start the bedtime routine. I'm not going to take my sleepy time pill or whatever it is that you need to do until later. I'm going to make sure that if anything pops up, I'll let you know so you can help me tackle it during the day. Make sure not to eat the wrong things. I mean, you start to really say, I'm going to have a date with myself. And then that turns into something where you turn it into a date with your partner. Again, easier said than done, because most people, what do they want to do when they get a break? They want to veg out. They want to get onto social. They want to escape, right? Escape the reality, or sleep, which are all very important. But so it's the reality is that that's part of the work. If you're just like, we don't assume our kids are going to, at a certain age, feed themselves, shower themselves, go to bed. We are a part of that bedtime routine. We need to also extend some of that energy sometimes during the week to our partnership.
Yes. So there's often that one person that wants sex and one that doesn't. And so there's different roles, right? The initiator versus the decider. I really liked that, just the way that you framed it. I understand the initiator, but I really didn't think that the person, there's a person like, so I really want this, honey. And then the person's like, they are the decider.
They get to decide. And often that's the person with lower desire who is getting to decide. So they're actually in control. And if it's always one person versus the other, that's where I see that resentment happens. If you're always the person, and I will say, maybe a lot of your audience is women, they identify as women. Yep. I would say a lot of women, especially in my practice, have confided in me that they don't practice initiating. They've never really had to. And the assumption is, I think societally, that women are obviously wanted by their partners, that it is, they never have to question it, that their partner would always choose to have sex with them. And so most of the time, women just literally lay back and are waiting for their partner to initiate. And it's an assumption that's made. Well, think about what it would feel like if your partner never initiated, if you were the only one to bring it up, and how that might start to give you some insecurities about their feelings for you. And they could swear up and down, oh, sweetheart, no, I'm just, I just don't like initiating. It's, what if you reject me and this and that? You'd say, get over it. I need you to show me that you want me. I can't do this on my own. It makes me feel like I'm doing something to you. And I hear that all the time. Wow. Perfectly sweet, kind, connected partners will feel like they are doing something to their partner because they're the only ones that ever initiate. And a lot of women say, well, since I was an adolescent, I've never had to. And I feel like that's the guys, in a heterosexual relationship, that's the guys, they're supposed to pursue us. And it's it's just part of the way that things work. And I don't, that's very masculine, quote unquote, to go after him. This isn't a chase. Y'all are supposed to be investing in a relationship forever. This isn't like let's woo each other. No, you're supposed to have already done that. And now it's about showing your partner that you're willing to be more egalitarian when it comes to this, or else it can feel very one-sided, and that's not sexy.
No, it's definitely not. So you talk about 2 rules that need to be in place for sex. But first, you say it can be like a cruel joke, but in my practice, it's become clear that in most relationships, there's one partner who needs to feel emotionally intimate in order to have physical intimacy, and the other partner needs physical intimacy in order to have emotional connection. Mm-hmm. So it's like this, it is kind of a cruel joke. It's like, in order for me to feel connected to you, like, let's just say if that you're the person that just needs sex in order to feel connected, and the other person needs emotional intimacy in order to have sex. It's like, you're at odds. So one of the ways,
feel like you're at odds. But in actuality, you could look at that as a gift that each of you has an inclination, a tendency that's natural that fulfills both needs for intimacy.
Both of your needs. Yes. Oh, that's a good point.
So it's almost like strengths, right? It's these strengths that we have, but it doesn't always.
It's like a cycle, and the more you're doing it, you're giving to each other what you need.
And most people do feel like what you said, Robin, which is that it feels like it's at odds. It's the couples that don't feel like it's at odds, that feel like it's an actual gift. Oh, I have this natural tendency. It's something that we need to do. And their partner says, I have this natural tendency. That's something that we need to do. Those are the ones that tend to sail on through these road bumps.
Yeah. So you say, because sex is shared, 2 rules need to be in place. And they seem to be contradictory as well. Consent and compromise. I mean, consent is a non-negotiable. You both have to be okay and be willing partners in these sexual acts, right? But
Absolutely.
Please tell us about the rule of compromise.
You must have that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But what about compromise?
So
you say it's also necessary.
And this, it is necessary because, again, when you have to see your sex life as being one of the facets of your entire life, and in your daily life, and even in your own identity, sexuality is a piece of that. It is not everything. So the chances of that happening where your partner and you are equally consenting, equally wanting, equally ready for any sort of sexuality or experience or sensuality, that is very unlikely. Even for my couples who practice diligent scheduling, there's still this sense of when it happens, how it happens, what you're doing. That is a negotiation. So the compromise comes in when it's a negotiation of the how, the when, the where, not the what, right? Because most people are already saying, okay, we're going to engage in some sort of sexual experience, but somebody is going to be compromising the fact that, oh, you're basically bringing this to me. I have to then decide if I want to accept it, and when and where and how. And that's what is happening every time somebody initiates sexuality, some sort of sexual experience. It's in that moment you have to decide, is this what I want to be doing right now? Or do I want to continue eating my chips on the couch or having this conversation with my team, whatever it is. And so it is a compromise. Yeah. Equally.
Okay. Yeah. And so people are, I know couples are asking you, and it's one of our questions for the IG next is about frequency.
Yes. It's one of the most common questions that I get.
Of course it is. Yeah. And so there's a clinical definition of what a sexless marriage is, which I learned less than 10 times per year. I was like, didn't know that. People are going to, I thought that was, okay, that's the clinical definition. So what do you recommend as far as frequency to maintain, to nurture the sexual part of your relationship?
So while I am very sex positive but I'm also very realistic. And what I'm finding is that couples can be very fulfilled at 3 times a day, and others can be very fulfilled at 3 times a week or a month. And And so I'm not ever going to tell somebody what's right for their relationship. But in general, what I find is that if you're experiencing 2 sexual experiences per week, now those do not have to all be, revolving around penetrative sex, then chances are you're going to be able to keep up with feeling like sensuality is underlying your relationship. It's in the air.
Yes.
I also think that it's important for people to realize that, if you're partnered up with a man, that the American Medical Association does promote prostate health by asking them to ejaculate 3 to 4 times a week. Now, that does not mean partnered.
Wow.
That does not mean partnered. So if you are saying, because here's the other thing, and this is kind of getting into another topic, but I get a lot of women in heterosexual relationships who are like, I don't like that my partner masturbates. Okay, well, we can talk more about that, of course. But if not, just know if the American Medical Association is saying 3 to 4 ejaculations a week, are you able to, in a very healthy way, keep up with that? Not a lot of very busy moms and women are saying, sign me up. And so it's got to be one or the other. And I think that 2 partnered experiences, and hopefully one of them will be more sensual than sexual, can keep that spark alive without being too overwhelming.
Yeah. And you see, like you said, it doesn't have to be sexual, like penetrative sex every time. It could be like you call it sexual play. So it could be just like a very sensual massage, or
absolutely, even just a sexy shower together, or using a toy, or even just exploring with your hands and your mouth. I mean, there's so many things that you can do to bring pleasure, not just to yourself but to your partner. And I feel like if y'all can each be a part of that together, and you can associate pleasure to your partner, that counts. Check that box off.
Yes. It's about pleasure, people. Pleasure. Let's have more pleasure.
And if you're not having pleasurable sexual experiences,
that's the next question.
Certified sex therapist.
Yes, we're going to talk about your Viviana method, because Dr. Viviana method, because I think that we have to get into that too. So, but before we do, I know you're getting, just even that. Some people say like, I'm just not feeling it. I'm not getting pleasure out of this. There's no sexual compatibility. We're sexually incompatible.
And what do I say to that?
That's a myth, right?
It's a myth. And I know I get people who send me DMs and messages all the time.
I know, we don't believe you. No,
me and my ex, we were obviously incompatible when it comes to this. Well, that's why experiencing the joy and the fulfillment that comes from rounding out your intimacy style by incorporating all 4 of the intimacy styles in each or nearly all sexual experiences with your partner. And hopefully in equal parts. I like to aim for 25%. Imagine a circle and it's like a pie, and you want to do that. If you can incorporate all 4 of the intimacy styles as often as possible into every sexual experience, you will be compatible, because you and your partner are going to get your needs met. And of course we can talk about what those 4 are.
Yes, please. Yep.
That's why I say sexual incompatibility doesn't. It's when you are very, very very short-sighted in the way that you behave or see what sex counts as, and it only looks one way. Well, surely your partner's not going to, they're not experiencing your sensations in your body. And so it is very important. The other piece of it is that it's not like the 5 love languages where you can learn how to speak someone's love language. You cannot say, well, I am going to become a bonding style. That it's innate. It's something that comes from our childhood. It comes from our experiences as adults, as adolescents. With every sexual experience, we are learning what works for us. And we don't want to unlearn that just because we have a new partner that this doesn't fit for. So that's when I say, again, it is pretty simple. If you can, just like with the 5 love languages, I tell people, speaking any one of the love languages will get you on the dartboard, but your primary is going to get you the bullseye, and that's where you get the extra points. So I think with this, if you can speak, so to say, with your bodies and with your hearts, if you can incorporate all 4 intimacy styles into every sexual experience, you don't have to worry about what's going to happen 10 years down the road. Like so many people end up, they start off feeling very comfortable and typically, not all, but pretty good in the bedroom. And then very quickly or slowly but surely, it degrades into really next to nothing.
Yeah. So you have your intimacy quiz.
Yes.
I took the intimacy quiz, and everybody has to take the. I would recommend everybody take the intimacy
go to
quiz.
4intimacystylesquiz.com.
Yes, the number 4.
Yeah,
number 4, intimacystyles.com, and take the quiz. So let's go through the 4 intimacy styles that you've determined. And it is an understanding that, like you said, it's innate. We all have the one intimacy style that we are more prone to, correct?
So that can happen. I think what people are finding is that they have one that tends to be more primary, and then they have to actively incorporate the other 3 to round it out. And that's where the work comes in. That's where the changes come in. But again, if you're wanting to be with someone forever, that work is an investment. Being able to be well-rounded. And for all of the singles out there who are not partnered up with someone, being well-rounded and rounding out your intimacy style and knowing what that looks like, you're already ahead of the game. You're going to be an amazing partner when it comes to physical intimacy, because you'll already know how to do that without the growing pains.
Yeah. So let's go through the 4 intimacy styles. There's 4. Yes. The bonding style. Yeah.
Yes. So
do you want to go through?
Yeah, let's do it. So there's the bonding style, there's release, there's giving, and responsive. And I basically came up with these after seeing the last 15 years of, I went through notes because I keep really good notes as a therapist. And I would always ask people, why is sex important to you? What do you get out of it? When it's going well, how do you feel? What is it that really attracts you to doing it again and again and again? And that's where these 4 styles emerged. The bonding is someone who says, when I experience sex and sexual pleasure with a partner, I feel emotionally connected to them. I feel like I can open up to them. I feel like the vulnerability that we just had physically then segues into the emotional. And if there was a stopping point there, or a brick wall, or a door there, I don't feel like I can open up as much emotionally because we haven't been vulnerable in that way.
And boy, that is a huge problem for somebody that's a bonding style. And if they are not able to, if their partner's not willing to have sex, or just they're not into it over and over and over, like you said, that is such a huge problem in the relationship for that.
It's a huge problem. And unfortunately, their partners see it as, oh, well, you only want to talk to me and you only want to share with me after we've had sex. It almost feels transactional. Well, it's in the same way that for maybe that partner, they feel like, I'm only going to have sex with you if we've had a nice day together, if we haven't yelled at each other in the past 24 hours, if, you treated my mother well, or, like there's all of this that goes into the emotional, and we don't tend to say, no, that's not right. It doesn't matter if you're upset or not with your partner, you should have sex. Like, that's not what we do when people say that. But we do say, well, you shouldn't want sex, or you shouldn't feel closer to me only after having intercourse. And that's why it's never good enough, in my opinion, to just focus on your own typical or tendency when it comes to intimacy styles. You do have to have all 4, or else you get into this, well, what's right and what's wrong? It's not what's right and what's wrong. It's what's healthiest for your relationship.
Right. Okay. So that's the bonding.
So that's the bonding. Now, release, those are the people who feel this intense, and to what degree is different for everyone, but this feeling of well-being through sexual pleasure. And when they can associate it with their partner, it's like, oh my gosh, high five. You just You just gave me a
Yeah.
whole body hug that feels, it's just so comforting. It's so amazing. And they feel this sense of release and relief that they can then associate with their partner. So that's awesome. And then we have giving. So giving partners tend to be the people who are, oftentimes they're people pleasers, not necessarily always outside of the bedroom, but in the bedroom, what they say is, I could do this all day. I am here for you. The fact that you're being vulnerable with me and allowing me to give you pleasure gives me vicarious pleasure. It gives me meaning. It gives me a sense of purpose. And it makes me feel like I'm connected with you because you've allowed this to happen. And then we have responsive. So the responsives tend to get a bad rap because what it looks like is that they're not very interested in sex. What it is that their thoughts are not driven by sex. They tend to only be responsive and receptive to sexuality when their partners bring it up as an option. And that's when they say, okay, I will engage in that. They're the ones that tend to say, I really enjoyed doing that. We should do that more often. And then they leave the bedroom and it's as if their brains have reset and they kind of forget about how amazing
on their merry
it was. And they're on their way. It's not the same as somebody who is having issues with wanting sex ever or enjoying the pleasure or seeking that out, that they just don't get that. This is the people who, when they're in the moment with their partner, they enjoy it. They can even be that kind of person that says, I want to do this more often. They just don't because their urges are not driving them to do that. And so, if you can imagine, if you're with somebody who's responsive, they're not going to be the kind to initiate very often because for them, it's not really on the brain. And what I have found is if you take the quiz, forintimacystylesquiz.com, it's free. Go check it out. You'll get the percentage of each. The closest to 25% of each that you get, the better. So in the book, all over my social media, I give tips on how to round out your intimacy style. And if you can do that, you're likely going to be in a much better place. I truly believe it's the key to lasting physical intimacy for your long run and for the long-term relationship.
Yeah. Well, we are going to be posting pictures of you and obviously talking about your book and making sure that people know the website and go take the quiz. And I really do hope everybody reads your book, For Intimacy Styles. I learned so much and I so enjoyed our conversation. And one of our quotes we posted of you yesterday, which I think is just so poignant to our conversation, is how important intimacy really is to a long-term partnership. And you say, be the guardian of your intimate life. Be proactive and protective of your sacred, your intimacy with your partner. So
absolutely.
Thank you, Dr. Viviana, for the work you're doing. It's very important work. And
I love it. I love what I do.
I can tell you do. You're so good at it. So thank you. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And have a great day. Thank you.